we needed a generator.
I have an RV.
You too? Nice.
Yeah,
Maybe we
I've
do
got
a camping data event.
I bought a Class C recently, so it's a nice one. It's got 6 beds, but
Oh man.
I also have I have a MiFi, so I have like a nice 5G MiFi.
Oh no.
I'm gonna be working from the RV come July and August, right? Like we're going
Nice.
across country. We're
Oh,
testing it out the
goodness.
week after Easter.
Nice. Yeah, we've got a travel trailer. We've made it as far as Denver, and that took a while.
Yeah, I'm figuring the whole month of August people will be gone.
Nice. Very nice.
That's why we're gonna test out the hotspot to see if I can work from, the RV, and
I did
that's
tell
it.
you it's hard to work from where were we? South Dakota. South Dakota does not have
Yeah.
good any kind of signal for anything.
We're going the southern route. We have a friend in Alabama, a friend in
Oh,
Texas,
nice.
so we're going down that way, and then cutting across probably to San Diego, and then looping it back. We're gonna
Nice.
try to go all the way across. We'll see. Who
Yeah,
knows?
we've just make sure it's after Sturgis. I could tell you that as someone going cross country. Even though you're pretty far south, you'll probably be okay. But
Yeah, I think we'll be all
that
right.
really clogged up the roads. Okay, let me share my screen again. We are streaming on YouTube, and it'll be saved in YouTube so if anyone's chatting, it's going to be on YouTube. If you don't want to have the potential to interact, you could head over to YouTube. We could grab that link there. It's always hard to find that. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I'll share that so we can. So if people want to switch over to that, they can. Or if for the people who aren't on, let's see if I can find that chat here. 14 windows and 30 things going. Here we go. Everyone in meeting. There's the link. John, if you want to share that about. I think the link changes once we start recording, but in theory, we should be good. So we showed the events. More stuff's coming. A lot of stuff in the meetups, and there's a lot more meetups between Princeton, New York, and Philly. At some point, we want to do an in-person one, but I still want to record them and stream them for the people who are in different parts of the world so they could still see it, because we still have some interesting stuff. It'll be fun for the local people to actually, interact and, have some food. As John was mentioning, I found a cool tool to make backgrounds, so I put them in there. Not really relevant to the talk. It's going to be mostly demo, but I have some of it in the slides so you could follow along, because some of these are things that you can do. Don't really need to show you the demos, but it's these charts, just what's going on. I've got a couple different sources of data. I have NiFi feeding them, and then they go into Kafka. Once they're in Kafka, I could connect to them with anything. Could be Spark, could be a Java app, .NET app, whatever. But we're going to show you a Flink SQL today. And this is going to be a little taste of what's coming next, which is we have a easier to use version of Flink SQL that has some next generation features, which come in very handy. Unfortunately, we haven't made our official announcement yet, so I can't show that today. But within a couple of weeks, in the next couple of events, we'll be able to show that. And we'll have a big webinar on that with some of the team. So I'm going to show you some Flink SQL. I put the SQL in the slides, so you can get a copy of it, just to show you some of the robust things you could do with Flink SQL, and being able to insert from one Kafka topic into another one by just doing a select statement. You could change field names, you could pick fields you want, where clauses, joining together tables. Like here, I'm joining together two different tables. I've got device with sensors next to me and a device that's reading energy readings of that device. So I'm taking those two records together and joining them on time. You see, it's kind of a fake join. They don't really match together, but just to show you could join different sources of data. Pretty simple. Let's show the more interesting part of this running. Let's see if anyone has a problem. No. Oh, I'm just going to quickly put that YouTube link here for if anyone's coming in late. So we have a couple of different sources of data, which tends to happen in NiFi. This is the newest version of NiFi. It says 13.1, it's really 13.2. This is has some nice features in here if you haven't seen the new one. Things like emptying all the queues, downloading flow files. This one's helpful for me. I have this processor stopped, but I don't have to start and stop it again just to pass a run through. I could just run that once because I want to download all the weather data. It's a big XML of big zip file of XML, and I'm just going to send all those records to Kafka so that I can get them within Flink. So we've got that data. I'm putting it in weather data. I've got a schema for that, so I know what it looks like. That's this one over here. Pretty standard fields. Some of them are nullable, some aren't. You know, they got strings, some of them are number. You know, it's different data coming in. So we've got that coming in, and I'm sending that to Kafka. That's our first part. So we've ingested the data. Now it's waiting to be processed. I've got a bunch of Flink jobs here running and some that completed. I've got two different ones here, and I'll show you those in a minute because we're doing weather. So if we look at this one, this is weather, and this is a pretty simple one where I mentioned that insert. So I'm taking it from one Kafka topic, putting it into another one, doing this simple select statement where location is New Jersey, which is where I happen to be right now. So if we want to take a look at those topics, let's look at weather. So we have the general weather one. You can see we've got a bunch of records in there, and I could see who's reading it. I've got two consumers. I've got a Kafka Connect app and a NiFi app there. And over here, I've got no one reading the weather New Jersey. I'm just pushing that data in there. And you can see I've got a bunch of data. Looks like nonsense because it's Avro. So I'll just tell it what to use the schema. And now I could see that record coming in. So I know there's data in the Kafka topic. So now I can go to everyone's favorite place, the command line. I'm connected to the Flink SQL command line interface. Obviously, doing stuff from the command line is not anyone's favorite. We will have that web UI added. Oh, Paul. But for right now, no web UI. We're in the happy land of the command line. I'm just going to connect to one of the registries where this data is. We were looking at weather New Jersey. So let's just take a look at weather New Jersey. I'm going to take a look at that topic first. Hey, Paul. Very cool to see you, man. We got to do another joint meetup at some point on some topic.
Yeah,
you could pre-record it all with Reprise and then do it, and people won't even know if it's live or not.
Yeah, exactly. And then it works.
That's very cool.
What's up, guys?
I think John is fixing something. There he is. The old crew, man.
You go live. You'll see me. What's happening?
Very cool. Early meetup today. I don't know. I don't know if that's a better time to do it or not, but I thought it'd be worth a try.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be done at 5:30, but I just want to hang out.
Yeah, very cool.
See the new stuff, you know what I mean? I want to see some Flink.
Oh yeah, I'm hiding the new stuff, man. I'm told I have to wait for the new stuff. I could show I could stop the recording. The new stuff is like this, but it's cool. I wonder if I could show. No, I don't want to get in trouble.
Nah, don't be dumb.
It's very cool. It's like this, but in a web, and it's
Nice.
easier.
Paul, I just spun up a cluster. If you do want to see it, I can do a separate Zoom session one of these days.
Whoa,
let me
look
know.
at that.
Yeah,
That's service, man.
that's right.
And it's based on Flink 112, which is cool that we're on the newer version here. And you don't have to look at the command line. I mean, there is some advantage of the command line, I guess. But in the next version, we have a couple of things that are really helpful for some people, like materialized views. So when I create something, I create a materialized view, and it'll output a REST endpoint that I could use in Jupyter or in NiFi, to be able to query Kafka data and Kafka results of a query, and it's cached for a configured amount of time. And as new data comes in, you just get that new data. That's pretty cool. Also have the ability to push out a webhook. So if you don't want to have to get the data, we can push it to you. So that's a nice way to have a smart REST interface and not something that's a little hacky. That's pretty cool. Other than that, it's, SQL on Flink. One thing that's nice is if you don't want to have to define a table, or if you don't want to use the Schema Registry, it can look at the data and automatically generate that schema for you. So that's a nice feature for those of us who don't want to have to predefine the query, predefine the schema. But otherwise, pretty similar. Under the covers, it's still generating Flink. So when I run that, I'm still going to get these results here. It's still going to create a Flink job, deploy it, and it's going to be running in this infrastructure. You really can't tell the difference. It generates pretty nice jobs, and it lets you set a lot of settings, so it's a little cleaner. And it, other than that, it's a regular Flink SQL job, so it makes it pretty nice. What's cool with running Flink SQL instead of doing something else, it builds a job that you can manage. I have these 2 jobs, and the jobs are just SQL. So this is a full streaming application in a line of SQL. For those of us who've been doing this for more than a couple of years, this was a really complex application. You had to build the boilerplate. You had Java or Scala or maybe Python code. There was a lot of pre-configuration. You had to predefine all the fields. Maybe you had to build a Scala object or Java object that had all the fields for the data you were going to pull out. You pulled the data from a Kafka thing. There was configuration file. Then you built it, tested it locally, deployed it to a cluster, realized you forgot a jar and it didn't work. Then you deployed it again. I mean, and eventually someone would write a script so you didn't have to do that every time. But it was a major deal to have an app deployed to Flink or Spark or anywhere in Yarn. But just to type a SQL statement, and a SQL statement that could take from multiple Kafka topics, do any kind of aggregates, where clauses, clean up, change the number of fields, combine a couple of fields, do some math, whatever you want to do, put in custom defined functions in there, and then just put those results in another Kafka topic. If I had to write that manually with Kafka streams or a Java app or even a Spark app, that's some serious work. And to just write a SQL statement, have it deployed as a running app, with all the features you need, with checkpoints and save points. So, you could stop this running, upgrade the system underneath it, restart it, and continues running from where it was. Really nice features for running a streaming app without having to, create some massive program that's complex. And the web version coming out in 5 days, you don't even have to do this complex statement here. You just run a select query and say, I want it to go to a sink, pick the sink, whether it's Kafka or a REST endpoint, and type run. Say you need save points, checkpoints, boom, how often you want to do it. And it runs for you there, gives you a sample of the data so you're sure it's right. And then it's just deployed for you. You don't have to do this extra complex insert into something. It'll do it for you. So that makes that pretty cool to do. That's about it for Flink SQL. Like I said, the next version that's coming out into the month makes things easier, but it's good to know this version because this is the extra work. This is why you upgrade to a tool so you don't have to do everything from the command line, write your own SQL or write your own app. Just use a web UI that can be just easily deployed. Second talk today, or let's see if there's any questions on Flink SQL. I mean, we have some people here. If anyone wants to either talk, I think John can unmute you. Maybe you can unmute yourself, or just put it in the chat. If you've got any questions on Flink SQL before I start going into DevOps and showing cats.
We do actually have, everyone has the capability to unmute themselves right now. So
Nice.
We haven't changed that setting yet.
Nothing could go wrong there.
So what exactly?
No.
What exactly are you doing there? Like, cause you told us the principle and
Sure.
and the cool stuff about it, but what are you connecting there?
Sure. I've got two apps here. This one up top, I have two different devices here, Raspberry Pis. One's grabbing energy monitoring data. One's grabbing, I've got an Enviro hat here that collects humidity, temperature, those kind of sensor nonsense. And I'm joining those two records together, building up a new record and putting it into another Kafka topic. So global sensor events, if I look over here, is a different Kafka topic. Ooh, got a gig of data in there. That's what you do when you have an outer join. And it put it in the right Avro format, use the correct schema, and it's just streaming that data into that topic.
Got it.
That is a nice app. I mean, if you wrote that in Storm 5 years ago, that's some serious business. The same for weather here.
A GUI on top of Storm would be great.
Yeah, I wonder if everyone will do that. Yeah, I mean, what the new thing answers a lot of the needs that we needed for that mystery tool that someone might have had. It sort of does things that would have done. You could do lookups, user defined functions, and do it with SQL.
As a guy who's used both of those tools now.
Yeah, there you go. You have a unique perspective. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh my God, this is the SQL Stream Builder is so much easier than SAM. It's way easier than SAM.
It actually works consistently.
Yeah, it works really well. I don't get my little red error up at the top that says something's wrong with my topology.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, pretty easy to trace these Flink apps within Flink SQL Yarn, or soon on Kubernetes. I mean, the original run ran on Kubernetes, so it'll have those buzzwords that people like, Kubernetes.
Cool, thanks.
Anything else? Otherwise, we're going to switch to NiFi DevOps, which is,
Tim,
yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there, besides the official documentation, is there any good training material or reading material that you would recommend for this? It looks really awesome.
Yes and yes. Let's see if I remember where it is. I'll post these links. And let me post this one. This one is
thanks.
pretty good, and it walks you through setting this up. And this is all Apache. You don't need anything special to run this. Flink SQL is, will run on your laptop if you've got enough RAM. You know, it's kind of like doing local Spark development. You could do it, you know, but, you know, it might not be as fast. It'll be better to spin up a one node cluster somewhere in the cloud and pay someone to do it. But you could definitely run this on your laptop, still do the SQL. The thing is, if you want it easy, you run a schema registry. If you don't want it easy, yeah, I didn't mention that. You can create your own tables. So down here, there's a bunch of different catalogs. I also have some Git repos to show you how I build up my settings to run Flink SQL, which you can do that in the Apache version. There's a couple of catalogs. The default catalog is the one that just comes out of the box. You don't have to configure anything. And it is pretty straightforward. This one, you have to manually create tables, which, you know, sounds like a lot of work, but it really isn't. Let me show you the syntax there. Let me grab one. I've got one in a magic window you can't see. But this is the SQL. I'm going to paste it in there. I already have this table, but just to show you, and I'll share the GitHub links. So this is what you'd have to do if you wanted to use a schema registry. You could do that. This is not going to work because I already created it. But let me grab one. I have one without a schema registry. That is that other table you saw on there. And these are against JSON. You can also do this against what do you call it? Avro. Yeah, here's one that has no registry. Very straightforward. Let me paste this. I'll post these GitHub links, but
Oh man, this is awesome.
yeah, this makes it really easy. So you don't need a schema registry. You don't need anything else. Create the table. You just need to know the field names. And you say Kafka, there's the topic name. If you want to use the earliest offset, which is why you'll see a lot of data when I run these queries, or if you want to use the latest, so it just gets the new stuff, point to one or more of your bootstraps, comma delimited. Again, I only have a one node cluster. Put in a group ID. This one's important, whether it's here or in another environment. If you don't have a Kafka consumer, it's going to restart the offsets every time, and that'll create some garbage within Kafka. And the next time you run the query, it won't know where that you last were. So this is important stuff if you want to use it for apps, to make sure you have a group ID there. And you see here, I had JSON in there. So if we look at, let's see if I can successfully change screens here. If we look at that topic, which was the transcom data, which is for the people in the local New York, New Jersey area, that's an XML feed of every event that happens within New York City, Philly, and New Jersey for transit. So it's a lot of data. So that's this one here. Oh, is that one that? Or is it transcom events? Oh, yeah, I might not have loaded any data in the other one. Oh yeah, here it is. Here's Flink consuming it. And it's just JSON data. And it's, you know, there's some DOT work on New York 25. So you better stay off that between Monday through Friday, which is tomorrow. So it's pretty easy to get the data in there. It's nice to have a key in there and the timestamp. You can get access to that timestamp. That's the Kafka timestamp, which is separate from what other data you have. So you can do some windows of data against that in your queries. So say I was only interested in data from this timestamp 1643, and you could have a window of a minute. So all those records in a minute, you could do some kind of aggregates on it. So if you wanted to track this, see you, Paul. We'll miss you. Thanks for stopping by. We got to do a joint meetup. You could do a window, you know, whether it's a couple of minutes or it's, you know, 1 minute, 15 minutes, whatever that window makes sense for you, an hour. And you could just have a window of data in there, do aggregates. do alerts. So there's a lot of different types of applications you could do besides the simple ones of event comes into the topic, send it somewhere. You could do aggregates and then push them somewhere else. I like the idea of doing an aggregate over a window and then, pushing that to Kafka and maybe having NiFi push that to HBase or Kudu. In an upcoming version, there'll be a sync that there's a ways to do it now, but it's a little messy where you could do a sync to HBase or Kudu. That'll be easier. So you could just have data come in and real-time stream to whatever event store, like say Ozone or S3 or HDFS or ADLS2, whatever makes sense. So
Okay.
it's nice, and you could do most of this out of the box. Some of the dashboards are a little different in the pure open source one, but the main thing is you can get to this command line. You can run your Flink. You can create tables if you don't want to use a catalog. Like I said, if you want to use the registry, there's a couple different registries out there. I'm using the Cloudera registry because I have
Okay.
it. But there's some other catalogs. You could also use Hive or Kudu as one. The Kudu one only points to Kudu tables, so you can't put regular tables in there. But this one, this registry is connected to the Cloudera registry, and it's one line of code to connect it, and it'll grab all of the schemas there. Now, to make it easy, you've got to make sure that they match up to the topic name. There's ways to map them, but then that's some manual work. If you name them the same, then you don't have to do anything. And what it's nice is I get all the fields there, and I know now I could just query one particular field here. So that's kind of nice.
Okay, and this will also support schema evolution, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
If you go to the Apache Flink website and look at version 112 is the one I'm doing today, and it's pretty new and very stable. There's a ton of features. If you look at the Flink SQL, there's a lot of features. And like I said, you can get started on just running by your own. What's nice is if you don't want to use the SQL, if you want to write it as a regular application, you could run these SQL through apps. You can use the other interface to do it. It's all there on the website. Pretty straightforward. If you haven't used Flink before, this is a great way to do that. It's so much easier than handwriting things in Storm or in other languages. And the SQL is really powerful. Having it on top of Kafka, really nice. Very scalable too. Alibaba runs their whole infrastructure on that. So you're talking,
yeah, it's going to save a lot of time.
What's that?
So we're about to start a new project, and using this approach will save an enormous amount of time. Thank you.
Yeah, I highly recommend Flink SQL. Like I said, having that deployed, this can be deployed on any size cluster. So if you've got millions of events a second, just add another node to the cluster, rerun the SQL, making sure that it uses however many tasks or brokers that you need. Very nice. Pretty easy to do. And like I said, very scalable and very easy to run. It's nice.
Thank you.
Very cool. Good to see people using that. The next part of the talk we're doing on DevOps for NiFi. NiFi has a lot of features. One of the ones that some people have had problems with is it's all graphical, which is great, but I'm not going to hand off and say, how do I, back this up? How do I move this? How do I change parameters? How do I figure out what's going on with this interface, by myself? Those sort of things become something you probably don't want to do graphical. I mean, it's all here in the UI, but you want to have stuff run at a consistent way. You want to automate it. Maybe it's with Jenkins. Maybe it's with another tool. Lots of different reasons or things you might want to do here, especially when you're starting to move it to production, move between environments, or just check the status of things, whatever it might be. In the slides, which I'll put these up and you'll get links to them, is links to the different tools that make this pretty easy. One of the tools is the command line interface. That one is great, and I'll show you some of that today. The newest version just came out. If you downloaded this a couple of weeks ago, please move to 1.13.2. There was a bug in 1.13.1, which is why Cloudera doesn't release it the day after the Apache NiFi version comes out, even though we're the ones developing it. It takes a little while to get through all the regression testing to find stuff, and Apache runs a little faster than all those tests. So 1.13.2 is stable, has some really nice features in there. I've got them linked in an article. But today we do DevOps. There's 3 different ways to do it. Command line, I'll show you the most stuff. I'll show you some REST. I'm not going to get into the Python API. Dan in the UK does a great thing on that. If people are very interested, I'll see if he'll do another talk on that. It is a very cool way. If you like Python, this wraps the REST API and lets you do some pretty amazing stuff. I mean, everything you could do with the REST API, you could do with the Python wrapper for it. And it lets you do things like, build a flow up completely dynamically from Python, add a processor, add another one, connect them, set parameters, start and stop them. Pretty cool stuff. There's some other stuff within, not just the command line interface. When you download the toolkit, it has got a bunch of tools in there. If you're using NiFi, if you have to do any of the operations or if you have to do debugging, please download the toolkit that matches your version. It has things like doing diagnostics, and I'll show you one of the reports, thread dumps, the command line interface. There's a lot of nice tools in there. It's gotten drastically better over the last 4 or 5 versions. So if maybe you used it way back 3-4 years ago, it's a lot better. The other way is REST endpoint. And I'm going to show you a cool way to learn what REST endpoints you might want to play with. One thing I like to do that I don't know anyone else likes to do is I like to have NiFi call the REST endpoints for another NiFi to be able to monitor NiFi. And it's kind of like this, where you got a balloon stuck to your head. Maybe that's not the greatest idea, but I've got a tool I like, I'm going to use it. So if you like Python, you like just doing stuff with shell script, REST endpoint makes this pretty easy to do. And it's very well documented here. If you write custom build your own NiFi from source, you can enable Swagger. So you can get a Swagger version of the documentation to run. I didn't think to do that for this talk. I should have. Using Swagger to run and test the API is very nice. But there is a interesting way to see every REST call. And it's not really secret unless you haven't thought of doing it. If you go to NiFi, and let's see if I have one running already. Now, so we go into NiFi, and if you're in Chrome or Firefox, most of the browsers have them. They've got developer tools. And we're going to go to the network tab. And what you're going to see is pretty interesting. As I go to different pages, all of these are the REST calls that I want to do. Every part of the NiFi UI is a REST call. There's no actual code in that front end. It makes it all REST calls and as JavaScript put it together. So if you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get this piece of information I see on the UI? Maybe I want to do something interactive with it. You can grab it by running the app. Like, how do I get the summary? How do I get the bulletins? Current user status. it did all that to show this page, and you can see it adds more as I go through these. These are all different calls, like how do I get those errors there? You know, how do I get, like say I'm going to add parameter context here. You could see it down there, all the calls it's making. So you could follow along and go, okay, I want to do this call. How do I get that? You know, how do I navigate through this? Very easy way to learn the REST endpoints, find your data, start doing things programmatically. It's a good way to start. While we're in here, there's some new functionality here. Like we have the ability to empty all these queues, we're apply parameters. When I'm inside here, we've added some new features for how do you do concurrency? What do you do for outbound data? Just some extra features. So if you want to find the REST endpoint, go to that console, watch all those network calls, and just grab the one you want. Pretty cool hack there. I don't know, that's the easiest way to do things, but it works. But I have some of them documented here, so you don't have to. If you don't feel like going through the exploration of the UI to find what you're looking for, most of it's documented at that website. I've also copied down some of the ones that are really useful. Finding out the cluster summary, getting all the bulletins. If you want to see provenance, you could actually scroll through it through the REST endpoint. So interesting things there. You could see status of things. There's also, to navigate through things, there's IDs. So you can grab a list of process groups, and you've got all these long codes like you see there. You know, once you have them, then you could dive deeper in there. That's why the Python API makes it easier, because you're going to want to take that list you get back, pull out the IDs, and maybe dive deeper. One place that you don't have to worry about that complex ID is at the root. So at the root canvas, you can always access that with the word root. Very easy to do, but you know, if you want to get all the process groups, well, they're all under the root. You'll get them by looking at that one. You want to see all the controllers there. Boom, you work your way down. Very easy way to navigate. But I don't think most people want to do that unless they have an existing tool or dashboard. That's a little bit tricky. Command line's a little bit easier, as much as I don't want to tell people go into the command line in this day and age. Again, we were talking about the other one with SQL Stream Builder making command line not necessary. We have a new version of NiFi coming out where you don't really need the command line to do things like monitoring and moving data around, but it makes it easier. And it's good to know how to do these things if you have your own DevOps tools, or it's good to know what happens underneath the covers, even if there's a great web tool there. Because, you know, you try to debug something, or if a new version comes out, what is it really doing? I want to know what's actually happening, you know, underneath the covers. This is an example one. All I need to do is, if there's no login, if you have a login, you probably want to put that in. For the command line interface, there's a property file that could have your login information, could have the name of the servers, you know, name of the NiFi registry, lots of different things. But by default, if you're using the one that's local, you know, you just download a NiFi, want to test it out or use it as a developer, you know, you don't need to log in. You know, especially now, the new version of NiFi is by default will only listen on 127.0.0.0.1. So you can't accidentally install it on AWS and everyone can see it. We're trying to, by default, lock things down a little bit. So, you know, obviously you should add security and Kerberos before you put anything in a public or even semi-private or public cloud environment. If you're running on your laptop and no one can get to it, maybe it's not important. But the second you think you're secure, you better lock something else down. But if you don't have to log in, this is pretty easy. I can point to any server that I want, that I have access to. by passing in a URL or putting that in a property file. And then you could just run different commands. This one's very useful. This is showing me every program group. So every program processor group I have on the dashboard, here's the name of every one. Here is that ID. So if I want to dive into it, I can grab it. It also shows me what services are running there, which is helpful. That one comes in handy. Another thing important with the command line, by default, it'll show you the simple UI, which is that, attempt at them to format a table like old SQL Plus. Sometimes you want to do that when you're doing an interactive. If you're using it with a tool or a script or DevOps, something that's going to parse it, you do the switch to output JSON. You get that JSON, and then you could parse that with JQ or whatever JSON thing you have, and then get the fields you need to go to the next step. If you do have multiple steps, there's different kinds of commands. Some are just what's going on. These are general ones for NiFi, like what's the cluster summary? What are all the services? Can I take a look at these reporting tasks? These are general ones. If you'll notice, they're very similar to those REST calls because this is basically the same UI. This is a shell script that's wrapped to call those REST endpoints. So it makes it a little easier for you. This one comes in handy for me a lot, is enabling and disabling services. So what happens when I build a new server, a new cluster, and I want to move all my flows over there? I have a ton of process groups. All those services by default are usually stopped. So I might want to try to start them all so I get everything started and ready to go to run. So with enable services, I could start enabling those services so I don't have to go into it. Now, there's times when you might want to manually do that, but once you don't have to, again, that secret keyword of root, all the process groups on down, start enabling services. Now, a little tip that you might not have thought of is sometimes there's things that depend on each other. And this enable services goes through it once and goes, I started what I could. Well, sometimes there's things you needed to run before you can run. So say access to a connection pool, access to a schema registry. I use the magic rule of 3, and I try to run that 3 times. I run it 3 times in a loop. That'll get me everything started that doesn't need any kind of special parameters or someone to enter something. And then you could check the status, see how everything's are running, see what services are there for that. And I can then start the full group up. Again, enable the services and start it. And then maybe I could check the output, check for errors, then stop it again if I needed to. This can be as a way you might do a blue-green deploy. There's a lot of different things depending on how advanced you like to do things. Maybe you're doing this for a test, so maybe Jenkins is triggering it. Spawn up a Docker or a pod somewhere or a VM, install the process group, run it, start it, stop it, check the output, check the provenance, and then stop. And then you could see, maybe have some other regression tests in there, maybe dynamically generate flow file as a test, or load from a directory or S3 bucket somewhere to get your test data, run it, see what the results are at the end. Lots of different things you could do there. If you're not using parameters, please use them. That is used in all future things. Variables are going away. There's a couple features people liked for variables. We are adding those features to parameters where it makes sense. But this is the part that's powerful for parameters. And I'll show you for my demos that I do all the time, they don't let us keep a cluster running. So I have a script that loads my flow, builds up all my infrastructure, schemas, tables, everything I need, and it pushes in parameters. So with these parameters, I have every parameter I need to run my demo, and I could just manually import that in there. And if you see I have a variable name in there, I have a very simple script that just goes to a list of all the parameter context that I've exported as JSON and just loads them all into the system. Then using the other ones, I could set that to all the different process groups. Then they'll all have those variables I want. Then maybe I can enable the services after that. Again, whether that's for deploying a new environment, moving from dev to production, for a test where you build an environment, set everything, and then shut it down, or just if you're like me, where they let you have access to a cluster for a couple of days and you got to blow it away, makes it very easy to do that. Now, the other place where you can have flows is in the registry. So the command line doesn't just do NiFi, it does the NiFi registry. So here you could do things like create the new bucket. So if you were doing a test of the registry as well, you could spin up all the things you need for the registry, import your different flow versions, and then they're ready to go. And then you could use the NiFi ones to pull something out of the registry, put on the cluster, pass in the parameters, start up the services, start it up. You see where this is going. You could do a pretty complex set of deployment, testing, all those sort of things that you might need to do there. I've got links to all the things there, but let's get into a demo before I show you my cool background. So we had all that Flink stuff running. I'm going to leave that running because, again, I'm destroying my cluster today. So if I had to manually set this up every week, which I was doing for a while until I figured out that's not a fun thing to do. So I have a GitHub that has all of the things I need for my demos, and it has a script which goes through and builds everything. And it does things like, read all the schemas that I have, load them in, create a Kafka topic, create a Kafka Connect app from them, build alerts, deploy everything in NiFi. All of it's very easy to do from that command line. Import a parameter context or all the ones that I have. I remember I said enable those services. Probably should have put that in a loop, but I was lazy. Should probably clean that up. Look at the process groups, make sure they have the parameters, all those sort of things there. Let's go to the happy command line. Let's go down here. This is Flink SQL. Probably shouldn't leave that running. That's Terraform. Here we go. So this is a very fancy UI. Again, you're probably not going to do the CLI interface interactively, except when you're testing it out or maybe quick debugging something just to figure out what's going on. Once you've figured out what you want to do, you can run each, like I said here, using that as a shell command. This can also point to configuration one, so it can have the name of your server, the name of, if you've got Kerberos login or whatever your login mechanism there is, so you can do that pretty easily. It's also nice to do it this way. If, say, you're calling 50 servers, maybe you can have a loop in your system, go through them all and replace that there if they're different clusters. If it's a single NiFi cluster, you only have to call into one server, or, if you have a load balancer in front of it, that URL, and that'll deploy it to all the servers in a cluster. These are if they're different unrelated clusters or servers somewhere. Like I have, this one is running on my laptop. I also connect to, this is a server cluster I have running in Amazon that I have to spin up every couple of days and then destroy. But it's pretty easy. What's nice, if you're interactive, it shows you what you have. Like I tab there to get some information. So like NiFi is a list of commands. I tab, get everything I can do there. The only thing that it doesn't do is if you didn't set your servers, you're going to have to pass those along. Again, I don't like to set it because often have a couple of different ones there. So I have a really small cluster there, but it gives you an idea what you can do. I could just go through any of these and find out what is interesting for me. Now I've got a couple in there, like let's look at those parameter contexts. Only have one. So if you wanted to go to the next step in parameter context, you could take a look and say, what else can I do with those? I can import them, export them, merge two together, those sort of things. We also have, besides that, you've got different things you can do within process groups, whether it's create a whole new one, create a service to it, disable the services for one, stop them, or get the status. Like, let's do lists, because I don't remember what they are. I should save that. By default here, I have, this is doing the that format I mentioned, the simple format. You could choose to pick the more complex format, but this one's easy to do. If I needed the JSON, I switched to OT JSON, and it'll give me a long list of JSON. So if I look at my server, it gives me a nice synopsis of everything going on, what services are running. This one has it disabled. Why? Maybe I want to know why is these invalid? What's going on with that one? Now I know that one's still in development, so it's not a big deal. I know this one is running stocks 2. So if I wanted to do something and take a look at that one, I did one, do I want to get the status of that particular process group? I know it's going to be on this server. Put that in there. What are the other parameters? I need the ID of that process group. This one, again, is easier when it's automated because you're grabbing these long ones. And if you do root, you can get the one for root because that name is always there. But here I went in, and if I needed to do that, I could stop it. Say I wanted to stop that one or start it. I could just go stop, and we'll stop that one. And then we could check the status again after stopping it. Now it says everything stopped. If we take a look at the NiFi service, make sure it's reloaded. If I come in here, everything stopped. Let's go in here and start it up. See if that works. Again, sometimes you stop things. You might have to start services. You might have to do some other stuff. Something might have happened in that time. Takes a little longer to stop something. Let's check the status. Says everything started, nothing invalid. Refresh. Everything started. Pretty nice. I'm stopping these because I don't want a whole bunch of data coming in for stock data. But if I wanted to run this just once without starting and stopping it, got this run once there, kind of nice. So you could see how easy it is to do that. Obviously, you could code this to do this any way you want. So, start and stop things based on what's going on. People ask me, how do I do this more job oriented? This is a way to simple do that. Stop it, start it when you're ready. Check the output, check the provenance. You probably want to use the stateless NiFi engine instead, or wait till the new release we have coming soon. But this gives you a way to do that. It's just a nice interface to access what's going on, do backups, check statuses, connect things. Now we also have the registry there. So you could do things like create a new bucket for versions, download things, import, export, different things you could do there. Pretty straightforward, but makes for an easy way to do things. Once you've figured out what you want to do, then you could just make a script of it. Like for me, I've got a couple of shell scripts I have to do these things. Like I want to export these parameter contexts. I put them in a file. You could have something you do there where you cron back them up, when you change things. I've got to migrate. That's, again, I take what I'm running in development on my laptop, and I could just send those parameters somewhere else. Maybe I keep them separate. I can version control those parameters. Pretty straightforward. you know, pretty easy to do these sort of things, but you know, these things come up when you need to run apps. You need to be able to back them up, keep them up consistently, do what you need to do here. Let's show you what one of these parameter files looks like. Let's see where they are. That's the flow file itself. Oh, maybe I don't store them in here. Oh. No, here we go. They only have 2 here. It's pretty straightforward how parameters are stored. They're stored as JSON. What's nice here is you saw I could use that for deploying this to clusters. I could also use this to run a flow file at a time with the stateless NiFi runner. And here's just parameters that I needed, you know, like Kafka, some SQL, you know, whatever you have in a parameter. If it's sensitive, it's not going to be stored in JSON, or it's going to be stored encrypted, and you'll have to add that as part of your process. But you could set parameters as things are being deployed so that, you know, you could do that, or you could rewrite these files with new information before you send them somewhere, or you could build this up dynamically. I mean, it's pretty straightforward JSON format. So if you wanted to build up a set of parameters while you're deploying things, very easy to do, or to change parameter groups while things are running, or stop a process group, apply a new set of parameters and restart it. Maybe you're testing something, you want to change servers it's connecting to or tables, you could do that. Pretty straightforward, not that complex there. That's the main part of that. We have time for questions, or if people want to see more on Flink SQL, NiFi DevOps, or NiFi 113.2, which is the new version, which has some pretty cool new features in there. You could either speak directly or put it in the chat if you don't want to talk. Hopefully nothing's happening in the YouTube group, because I'm not checking that, because if I go to YouTube, I get the audio from a few seconds ago start coming in, which gets a little confusing. Any questions? Anything people want to see? Perhaps not. We have
I
no
jumped on
prizes
YouTube
today.
too, just to check. I don't see anything on
Okay.
YouTube.
Well, that's good. I don't want to be missing out, because that happened one time. There was a whole bunch of questions there, and we didn't see them. That was kind of sad. We missed all that, but you know, that can happen. One thing we could show is, if you saw the demo jam, Pierre was showing some pretty cool stuff. One thing that he's showing is the query reporting task. This one is nice. Now, if you saw, we said, well, you got to use the REST endpoint to get to things. Not necessarily. If you don't want to grab, you know, that detailed information about NiFi by doing a REST call in, and you have to figure out how often I want to do that, you can go the other way. You could have a NiFi reporting task, look at these metrics and send them to you. And you can look at all those things that we saw in the REST endpoints, things like connections, status, bulletins where the error messages or warnings will show up, status of a different process group, information on the JVM, the provenance data for everything going on with your flow, and you could do a query against it. And here's all the different fields you could show. What's cool is you do that query, say you do one where I just want everything from the provenance data. More likely, maybe you want the provenance data for one process group or one particular flow or one thing. Maybe it's the processor that reads from FTP. Maybe it's the one that is connecting to your database to see what's going on. So when you did that query, let me push it somewhere. I can push it to any JDBC store, can push it to Kafka, can push it right to Prometheus for people who like to use that. I can push it to another NiFi cluster and then have NiFi processes. This is what Pierre did, which is pretty neat. You can also script it. The logging one can sync that into the NiFi log, which it's probably there already, but some people like logs. Another one that's kind of cool and is a feature that they added to the regular part of NiFi is using this. If you see this as record sync lookup. So in case you aren't sure where you want it to go, it can dynamically choose different places. So let me show you what I mean. So this record sync can let me pick, if there's a certain parameter, what kind of sync do you want? So if some messages you want to go send to a database, some you want to send to Kafka, some you want to send to Prometheus, some maybe you want to script, some you send to NiFi, you could do that. That is a really cool feature. I was looking at this for NiFi because you have these dynamic ones. I'm trying to think what flow it was, where you could do a record lookup. So say sometimes you want to use the same process group for, what is it? Record lookup. I got to remember the name. Or is it reader lookup? I got to find where I did that. What's cool about this is sometimes, say you want, sometimes it's JSON, sometimes it's not. So you want to change that. Let me stop this. We'll change this on the fly. So I can create a new service that is the, where is that? Oh, where's the lookup one? Record lookup. Yeah, there it is reader lookup. This is the same idea. So what will happen is you could pass in a parameter here. So say it's JSON is my parameter. When you have a JSON parameter, use the JSON reader. When the parameter says the property value is Avro, then use the Avro reader. So now all of a sudden I can make this, well, I didn't finish doing this. I can make this generic. So that's pretty cool. And the same thing for the writer. So I can pick record set writer and go in here and same idea. If it's JSON, you pass that parameter in, I'm going to use the JSON writer. So if you get the idea, now this thing is not tied to a specific type of data anymore. Oh, I'm on the local host. I have censored data coming in. So what's nice is, say a record's coming in and I can reuse this module even if it has a different schema, but now even if it has a different type of data, like sometimes you want to send in JSON, sometimes you want to send in XML, sometimes you want to send in grokkable logs, sometimes you want to send in Parquet. You know, there's a bunch of different readers we have in here. If you take a look, you know, CSV, grokkable logs, JSON, Parquet. You want to run a script on it, syslog, Windows events, XML, and that's an open API if you want to run your own. Hopefully I didn't break that. No, didn't break it. So that's a really nice feature. So you can make something completely reusable. So you could write a module that just takes any data in and looks for a parameter. So pass in the data plus an attribute parameter that says JSON in, Avro out, or XML in, Avro out, and you don't have to have another copy of this process. It can be generic, and you could pass in like these queries as well, or have parameters for all those. So you can completely make a generic module that says, take some type of data with some type of schema, convert it into another type of data with a different schema, and use this SQL query to do it, and then push it to Kafka in this other format. And you could have that generic where you wrote that once and you just pass in different attributes or parameters to decide what you're going to do. And we saw we could dynamically create parameters and pass those and assign them. You could do some interesting things where I take a generic module, push that out there and have, spin it up with certain parameters and maybe dynamically create a generator to send the data in any format you want. So that's really nice for reusability. Any more questions? Otherwise, we could end a little early. Data preview. Can you elaborate on data preview? I can see data within provenance. This is data that's passing through the system as it's happening, including the content. Like this happens to be, this is my electrical reading off my little electric device here as it's coming in. But we get all that provenance metadata here, the unique ID. This one came in from a device that called into HTTP listener there. So I got an agent there, tells me where it comes from. I've got the name of the schema so I can connect to my schema registry, find that out. I'm trying to think what data preview you want there. What other data? Well, we could preview the data while it's still in Kafka here, or I could query it with Flink to see it. Let's get that out of here. Not sure what other preview you're looking for. We passed that tutorial. If we have no more questions, John, you got anything else we should show them?
No, I think you went through a lot. It's pretty action packed.
I guess two talks and one meetup is probably enough.
That's pretty quick. Anyone have questions out there? I mean, you guys can unmute yourself. Don't be afraid to talk. I
see a question. Is there a way to aggregate defined within the query definition? Yes. The aggregation is ridiculously easy, actually. Let's get into Flink SQL, wherever that is. Is this it? Let's see. Yep. Let me run it up and I'll show you in a second here. I have an aggregate query. Let me grab you one to show you what I mean by aggregates. If I could find where they are. Here we go. Has that one got a good one? Yes, it does. It has a couple of aggregates, which might be interesting. Hopefully this is a valid query. Okay, so we're going to use, we got a bunch of catalogs. If you weren't here for all the Flink thing, I'm going to use the registry catalog, bunch of tables in there. I'm going to put aggregates in here for my query. They are what you expect in SQL. Here's a max. Here's an average. Here's a minimum. It's got a group by and a having. If you've done SQL, that's going to look really familiar. Hopefully I typed it in right. Oh, I didn't finish my having. That would be good. Having temperature over 50 degrees Fahrenheit is probably a good one. Let's, where do I have this deployed? Let me show you a Flink here. I should not have seven different computers running here. Move this over here. So I just deployed that SQL you saw here. Let's take a look at it. So this has got those maxes in there. So that is one of the ways to do the aggregates. If we look down here, it's showing me ones where you saw it had the having where the temperature, max temperature, what was it having? Let's see what that query was.
You said greater than 50 is what you did.
Greater than 50,
from
yeah.
the
So,
CLI.
Yeah. So it's a pretty simple query, but it's pretty powerful. I pasted in there twice. But yeah, you can have any of these you want. Also, the Flink Sql Syntax supports a lot of interesting things. and you could probably spend hours going through them. There's some I haven't tried yet because you got to make sure your data fits well in that, whatever. But this one these are pretty simple, a max, a min, and that's over as the events are coming in. So, and I could set this up in a window. So let me just show me the last hour. What's the max among that last hour? And, just display it. Or it could be used as for alerting, or do I want these averages or max or mins and push them out to a topic and maybe get stored in HBase or Kudu or Hive or, wherever you want to, S3, or just for alerts. I could use an insert statement in front of this to say, if we saw that halving, so if it's greater than 50, I want to send an alert. So just grab these field and maybe the aggregate value to say, hey, we've, for the last 5 minutes, the maximum temperature has been above some temperature that we deem safe. There you go. Those sort of things. But it's nice because this is over Kafka as it's running. Merging, yep, you can combine into a single table, which is very useful. And you don't have to have the averages or any of the aggregates. And there's a bunch of other aggregates which are specific to streaming. They're on the Flink page. Some of them get a little complex because you got to know when to sync them. Some of them also, you got to make sure that you have a timestamp, especially for some of those windowing ones. I'll post some links to some interesting queries we have. Like I've got one you could do tumbling windows. I'll show you this one. I don't know if I have this table set up anymore, but I'll post this query here just to show you another example of some of these aggregates you could do, where you see here it's got a group by and it's got a tumble. So it's just going to go over an interval of time for a minute, but it could be 15 minutes. It depends how fast your data comes in, how much data you get, where you care about this. If you look, this is not a static thing of data. It's waiting for new data. I don't have much new data coming in, which I could send. This query is specifically grabbing just data for New Jersey, which is not a lot of weather stations in New Jersey. If there were, we'd get more. So here I'm just running it. Someone came in late. We're almost done here, but here we go. So this one is running. We can watch it. I'm in the right place. And you'll see the data is coming in continuously. You could dive down deep to see how many records have come in. We could set watermarks. You can watch all the different metrics of this, which makes sense to you. I want to look at, records that come in over time, those sort of things. This is standard part of Flink, and it translates all that to me to this deployed app that's running at scale with that group by. I didn't have to write anything other than standard SQL there. And then just, if I added an insert statement above it, I can get one of these that's going to put it into another Kafka topic. Pretty straightforward. And once it's in another Kafka topic, I get another Flink app, grab that, do something, or Kafka Streams, Kafka Connect, NiFi, Spark. Kafka is a pretty nice way to do that and spread that around. Let's see, is there any other ones? Yes, you could do merge, you could do aggregates. Can I use NiFi registry share flows? Yes, that is our great debate. Is, do I have one NiFi registry, or do I have one per environment, or do I have both? Now, if you use the Cloudera CDP data hubs, it puts in a NiFi registry and auto connects it for each cluster, which is good to have. And you can keep that so you maybe, you have that environment. But very often, and for ease of use, it would help to have one primary NiFi registry and have that the main source of updates, have that, back up into a Git repo or GitHub, and then have DevOps pushing that to all the different clusters. That might be easier. In the next version that Cloudera is releasing, this cloud-based Kubernetes version keeps a master catalog of flows and lets you dynamically add parameters with a wizard and deploy them under the covers. But yeah, most people will have a dev one and a production one, but some people like to have a main one and just deploy it to all the clusters. Whatever's makes sense for you. There's no wrong way to do it. But if you have two, then you got to manage two. That's, not the end of the world. It's not the most complex thing to manage. And it's very easy with that command line interface or DevOps or REST, to keep them in sync if you wanted. There's also, if you look at the NiFi registry, in the configuration file, there's hooks that happen. And the hooks can be used to push, a flow comes into the registry. As soon as that comes in, some event happens. You could hook up a hook to do something at that point. And that could be for you to keep them in sync or to run some job. There's a lot you can do there. What I do, I like the way Data Hub does it, where I have one with each cluster. So, that way I always have one there for developing things. And then I have the production one, which only the one person or one group of people have access to. They keep that as the primary one, and things go in there when they're ready. And the local one, I could have a ton of different versions. Keep one that these are all the versions that have been in production. So you don't have to think about, well, let me set different buckets for these were production, these only made it to dev, these never made it out of test, those sort of things. Nice to have one to know everything that was in that registry, every version was the one that ran in production. So if I need to pull those out and say, okay, go back to what we ran last year, I could just go there and get it. Obviously, you could back it up every time you put a version in. You could put it in Git, but that's a reason why you might want that. There's a great article by our head of NiFi product, Pierre, who, if you've seen his demo jams, are awesome. Highly recommend them. But he's got, if you go to his blog, he's got a really nice one on NiFi registries and production. I have a link to it somewhere. I'll make sure I post that to you. I also tried to put the link to every single thing in NiFi that I could find within this GitHub here. Sort of the idea of those awesome GitHubs that have a ton of links. This is mine. Please do a pull request if you want to add something, or just let me know and I'll add it. I try to keep a link to everything in NiFi that makes sense. These are really good. If you've haven't seen Mark's videos, go there. These 4 videos will level you up in NiFi from wherever you are up a level, because Mark helped write a lot of it. He knows what to do and what not to do. And sometimes what not to do is more important than what you do. If you want to look at anything, stop this video and go over there. Those are really helpful.
Yeah, I think these 4 videos are pretty much anytime I have people asking me questions around NiFi, or I go and I look and I'm like, whoa, that's a spaghetti flow. That's pretty bad. Like, you in code, you have code smell, right? There's definitely some flow smell going on in some workflows I've seen. And if you, I always show these videos, and it really does help. Brings things into perspective, how to tweak and turn, like threads, right? And the one thing everyone wants to do is they want to increase the threads on the processor, and they basically boost it up, but they don't realize that you only have a maximum number of threads for the entire cluster. So, then they jump up the thread count in the cluster, but that's actually related to the amount of cores that you have on the cluster. So, people don't understand the relationship, right? I know it's coding 101, right?
You got to watch
the video is fantastic.
Yeah, that one's helpful. I put little pictures of spaghetti in mine. That's spaghetti. Yeah, the only thing that NiFi is missing, which I've asked for, is the ability to add graphics to the background, because then I can put a full presentation in NiFi, so I don't have to leave NiFi. And I've been told I shouldn't do that. But what's unique is NiFi UI is you can pull that out of NiFi, and there will be another UI to NiFi. Since it's all REST calls, you could write your own UI and put graphics in it. If you do that, please let me know. I will endorse that. So I could use it for presentations. Be kind of cool. We have anything else? Because now we're actually close to time. Hour and a half.
Look at that.
I thought maybe it was too short. Then I thought it was too long. Now it's just right. Going once. Going twice. Any questions you have after this, just put them in the Meetup site. Respond to a GitHub. I'll make sure I post all the details in the Meetup group, so you have everything together. Maybe I'll put it in an article or a GitHub repo so you can access it. Because we talked about a lot of things and we mentioned a lot of links. I'll try to put them all together. Maybe I'll put them in an article and then link it in here in the comments for this particular meetup. And then I'll probably link it everywhere in the world like I tend to do.
Also, I mean, another thing too, right? So for those that are interested in getting to know more about NiFi, there's a pretty large open source community. So there's groups, but they have their own Slack channel.
The Slack
right, their workspace, so you can go in there. Yeah, you read a lot, hear a lot, do a lot. Right, there's automation from NiFi API stuff that was built third party. Right, lots of cool stuff.
There's a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, I think I have that. I have that linked in here somewhere. There's so many different resources. The documentation. You start with the docs. The docs are awesome.
Yeah, the docs are really good.
And then all the blogs. There's a lot. The community at Cloudera is good. The Slack channels. I think we got the Slack channels listed in there. Yeah, there's the NiFi Slack. Tons of places to get everything you need to know, or just ask John. He will tell you. he has a depth of knowledge. And you have a winter meetup coming up?
Yeah, we have a 101. So it's the Apache NiFi 101. It's basically, think of it as the Fisher-Price My First Meetup, right? Where we're doing all of, yeah, that's right. We're doing essentially all the way down from the beginning. What is NiFi? How does it work? We'll even go over like a couple very easy to do sample flows that I'll have ready to go. But yeah, this talk will be really good. Be able to answer some questions in depth if needed. But yeah, don't, if you tell your friends, don't worry, this is truly a 101. So no one will say, oh, don't ask this question, it's too rudimentary. The whole point of this is just getting people exposed to the tools. It'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to put all these links in an article and then post it in the meetup so we don't, because we've covered a lot of different stuff. We'll make sure you get to see all of it. And everything I did today is in different GitHubs. So I'll put all those GitHubs in there. It's going to be a page of 50 links, I think. And then the links will have links to links. So be prepared for a long day if you go through every resource.